So what becomes this issue is we play these games of emotional games, and we learn how to do them from the time we're children. We know how to turn on certain emotions to get certain reactions, okay? And out of those reactions, we learn what works and we learn what doesn't. And when we know something don't work, we try something else. And what happens is we learn a way of dishonestly talking to people. And if we don't unlearn those things and work at coming to a place of communicating, like Christ is saying, being honest and just open, we live in an emotional game with people. And our relationships are constantly in bondage. So for us to get whole, we have to come out of some things. Proverbs 29:25 says, "The fear of man brings a snare, but whoever trusts in the Lord shall be safe." The reason why you would allow someone to control or manipulate you is because you have misplaced priorities. Or you care what others think against your own better judgment and conscience. Or you have a fear of man. A fear of man is probably the most common one. A reason for why you would allow someone to control you and manipulate you is 4 reasons. Number 1, misplaced priorities. We're going to talk about each one of these. Number 2, you care more about what other people think against your own better judgment and conscience. Misplaced priorities.
Yep.
You care more about what others think against your own judgment and your own conscience. Number 3 is the fear of man. Now, what does Proverbs 29:25 say? The fear of man brings a snare. It's a trap to your soul. If you are more afraid of man than you are of God, it's a trap to your very soul. You already have a problem because you fear man above God. You fear more what someone else could do to you, what they could say about you. Or they could ruin my reputation. Then you care about what God thinks. The last one is that you are scared of disapproval and rejection. We often live in a fear of rejection, and again, it's a fear of man. And whoever leans on and trusts in and puts his confidence in the Lord is safe and set on high. I don't know about you guys, I want to be in that position. I don't want the fear of man, and I once had it. It was during that Robert Morris series that we did at the very beginning. When he talked about the fear of man, I sat right there sobbing, because that was me. I had a great fear of man. I'm not talking a fear of public speaking. It's not that I didn't have something. I had a fear of man. I had a fear of someone telling me, well, you're judging me, or I don't like that. You know what I come to find out? I didn't write it.
That's right.
So if I simply speak it and you don't like it, deal with it. I got to the point where it's like, go argue with God, because it's not my word, it's His. I'm not afraid anymore. He took it right out of me like a vacuum. What does it matter? It's not Him. I don't stand on my own authority.
That's right.
I stand on His. But often we're so afraid, because we're so afraid of what people will think. What are they going to call me, crazy? Go right ahead. Go right ahead. Call me radical if you want to. Because I'll still stand with the Word and not what the world wants to teach.
Amen.
I don't agree. It's not what the Word says. So, this is the key. As we get into this, I want you to keep this in light. Everything that I say, and this is why. As I get into these tactics, there's a habit that we most of the time have when we hear a sermon. Oh, this person should hear that.
Yeah.
No, you need to hear it.
Right.
Number 1, when you hear these tactics of emotional games, is it you? Judge yourself first. Is it me? Put the mirror to yourself. Is this me? If this is, Holy Ghost, you got to change something in me. the other thing that you do after you have evaluated yourself is then you go through and say, am I being manipulated? Is there a manipulative person in my life? And maybe I need to deal with a relationship issue. That doesn't mean you just go and kick people out of your life. What it means is you try to go and communicate with them. But you don't communicate on that field. The first key about this is get off the field and quit playing the game.
That's right.
Refuse. Talk honest, but absolutely refuse to play the game with them. And again, this goes back to Matthew, because Jesus says it in Matthew 18. If you got an issue with your brother, you're supposed to go to them privately and correct this in private. If it won't be received, you're supposed to take another. Okay, so it's not something you do on Facebook. It's not something you do in public. It's something you do in private. You try to correct the situation. If it's not received, Paul had to sever relationship with a few people who would not receive correction from him, would not receive, no, we're not going to behave like this and you're not treating me this way. Paul did have to do that a few times.
Yep.
And he talks about it openly after he dealt with it privately, that he had to sever some relationships. So that does happen, where you have to set a boundary. Boundaries are healthy.
Yeah.
I once heard Joyce Myers talk about this, best lesson I ever heard on boundaries. She said, boundaries are a fence with a gate, which means there is a way to get in, but you have to go through the appropriate way. But if you don't set a fence on your property, don't get mad at your neighbor's dog for coming and pooing on your lawn. You didn't put a fence up. Best thing I ever heard in my life, because it made so much sense to me. But she also said there's a huge difference between the jail cell that you make and the brick wall that you put up. Because now you're the prisoner. You don't knock people out of your life to make yourself a prisoner. But there has to be a gate where people can come in and access your life in a right manner. That's healthy. It's just part of its life. Jesus told us to be innocent as a dove, wise as a serpent. So there's a balance to everything. And I wasn't taught that as a kid. We just let everybody in our world. And you trusted people you never should have trusted.
Yep.
Because we were taught to trust people, not trust God. Nowhere in the Bible does it tell you to trust people.
Right.
Not even your spouse. It's not there. It's not written. It doesn't say that. It says to put your trust in God. Right there. Whoever leans on, trusts in, and puts his confidence in the Lord is safe and set on high.
Amen.
Our relationships, we're going to have failures in our relationships because we're two imperfect people. Marriages are two imperfect people. Families are multiple imperfect people in one household. That's a disaster waiting to happen. It's just a tornado because you've got, how many people? Some of us have 3, 4, 5, 6 people in a household, maybe 10. And you're all imperfect. So somewhere in our imperfection, we have got to learn to communicate, or we're going to have a constant storm all the time that's brewing. So this is about healthy communication. Stop communicating through your feelings and communicate through speech. Because it doesn't need to be on that field. That field becomes a way of controlling each other. We don't want to do that. We want to give people choices. Love is choice. Love gives people the opportunity to choose, even the wrong thing. Seriously, God does. He sets choices before us and says, you choose. Just remember there are consequences. There's blessing and there's cursing, life and death. But love still gives the choice. So there's a choice here.